rid of the landscaping company that we had because they were doing such a poor job. And we hired Grasshopper with the intent of giving us landscaping plans, one, to fix the problems that were caused by the former landscaper, and two, to beautify and enhance, as Ralph pointed out. If people can't get in the community because they don't like the way it looks, they won't come inside your front door. And so when we asked the landscapers to give us proposals, the specific was to make our landscaping work for us versus the landscapers work for the landscaping. And right now, they are working the landscaping. Our landscaping, we have trees and plants in the wrong places, wrong type of drainage going on, and so it's very landscaping company intensive. And so Scott's going to tell you about the plans that they came up with. And we asked them to do it in phases. We still haven't decided on the phases, but we wanted you to hear the ideas that they've come up with. Scott.
Hi, thank you for having me tonight. Again, my name is Scott. Grasshopper is a very local company. We're right around the corner from you. My cohort, Dean, was unable to come today. He's the president of the company. But we are a maintenance company. We're very glad to have your business, and I hope you're starting to see some improvements in how things are being done. I think as spring progresses and we have a lot more growth with the plant material, it will be pruned more appropriately, and I think you'll see a lot of softer, more natural look to the property, as well as fewer insect and disease problems. So in terms of our goals for the property, they're really fourfold, and the first one, of course, is just to improve the general look of the entire property. So going along with that, the second goal is to transplant, remove, or replace inappropriate plant material. Currently, you have what we would refer to as a builder's landscape. So probably far less planning than we would like to see in a new, relatively new landscape. Plant material that was chosen just because it looked good at the moment and planted rather inappropriately. You have some of the units have very low windows, 18 to 24 inches off the ground. You have a lot of Lugustrum and Anise and Cleara, things that naturally want to grow to at least 12 feet in front of those windows. So, those are what our goal is to find homes for all of the viable plant material that you have. So we're not coming in and throwing out any viable plant material. We would be transplanting that elsewhere. So the material that I just mentioned that gets to be 8 to 10, 12 feet tall can be moved to the fence lines, to soften the fence lines, to screen views, to offer some security on the top of the retaining walls that you have, and whatnot. So there are very few plants that we would like to simply remove, and those are problematic plants that tend to have specific disease and pest problems. Probably most specifically the Indian hawthorn that are especially planted along the Vista Road. It's just not an appropriate plant. We don't plant that anymore because it has so many pest disease problems. So along that same route, especially along the Vista Road, where the elm trees are starting to really grow in and offer more shade than some of the plant material would really appreciate. All that plant material can be moved and relocated, and more appropriate plantings and planted in those places. In addition, you may notice when you're walking around the property that there was very little improvements to the soil when plants were installed. You can see a lot of gravel, a lot of construction debris. So any of the improvements that we do in terms of new plantings would include a lot more soil preparation, because we're also going to be guaranteeing the plant material. We have a special responsibility to make sure that it's content where it's planted. In addition to that, another one of our goals is to repair some of the drainage issues that you have. Specifically, this, I guess it's referred to as the second courtyard. It's one of our top priorities. That middle turf area in that courtyard is really rather poor shape, including the turf itself. And then there are also some specific grading issues that have to occur both there and in other areas of the property. And lastly, one of our goals is to provide you with more seasonal interest, more textural interest, and that would be perennial interest that's scattered throughout the year. So we should have plant material that's naturally blooming in every season, but in addition to that, something that looks good as a cohesive planting, it offers year-round interest and it's just more attractive than what you have. Currently, you don't have a lot of blooming interest, so we would like to increase what you have. So, towards these ends, we have been preparing quite a number of specific estimates. I think so far we have only 10 or 12, but we've narrowed this down to 7 of the more important, what we would consider more important target issues. So the first suggested improvement, and these are completely up to residents and the board to decide where your interest lies, but we would like to see some of these foundation plantings swapped out so residents can see what the property will eventually look like once we work through each of these separate sections. So we have plans and estimates prepared for the first section of the units that face La Vista all the way at the far end, so away from the entrance. There are the first 5 or 6, I believe, in that first block, which we've separated out as kind of a logical first phase. Or there is also another plan and another estimate for the second block of units on the right-hand side when you enter the gates along La Vista Circle. And one is basically more of a face to the community, I suppose you could say, because it's right there on the street. It would also include some ground cover plantings between the street and the sidewalk underneath the crepe myrtles there. But the other block, the one on the inside, is a section that we picked because each of you must pass it on your way to your properties. So it's just something that you might have more interest and more appreciation for. So that's the first suggested improvement. The second one would be the second courtyard, again, that I was describing, to fix the drainage issues in that courtyard, as well as to replace the turf in that area. So there are certainly other areas that also need attention, but that one is a little bit more pressing in terms of actual damage occurring there. The third, which is a very small issue, is also near that courtyard at the end unit, which is 2253. There's a retaining wall that's a block retaining wall, and there's a lot of drainage that's occurring behind that wall, and we're concerned that it will start to undermine the integrity of the wall. So it's rather a small repair, but it's something that needs to be done. That could be done in conjunction with any of these other repairs. And also there's a very minor grading issue that provides a little bit of a pedestrian danger at the end of 1258 La Vista Circle, which is at the very far end, in the very far corner of the property, where there's just an issue of people walking around that building. There are also 2 tree plantings. I guess really one of them belongs to the condos, but at the mailboxes, there are 2 trees, 2 elm trees that are planted in really quite small planting beds surrounded by pavement. Those trees really need to be replaced with something that's more appropriate, that will still provide you with some height and some, specifically we're suggesting crepe myrtle, so it'll give you some seasonal color, but also will not damage the pavement, which unfortunately the elm trees were just bad planting choice on someone's part. And then finally, the last section that we've really prepared plans for are the foundation plantings for that area around that central courtyard, the second one. We will be providing plans for all of the units. We're just kind of chipping this off into smaller blocks. It's just a little bit more or less overwhelming. There will, as I understand, be all the estimates that we've given the board, these 7 estimates, as well as the plans for these estimates, will be sent in an email blast and also published to your website, so you'll be able to see these. But basically, we have three main parts. We have a plan. This is the plan for that second block on the circle when we come in through the gates. So from 1207 to 1219. So it's just a small foundation planting for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those 7 units there. And again, we're reusing what we can in that area. Everything that is viable will be transplanted somewhere else, and then some additional plant material will be planted there. In addition to that section, there's a larger scale planting for the central courtyard, that second courtyard, as well as the fronts and backs to those 2 buildings. We are kind of refining some plans for the backs of these units because we have some issues with trash receptacles and what may be happening with that. So because we're here, we're on the property every week, we can continue to refine these plans, to kind of better suit your interests and your budgets as well. And then finally, there is the entire frontage along Lavista Road. So that covers those probably 10 or 12 units there before you get to the condos here. So everything is very specific, exact quantities and varieties of plant materials which are located. Everything in terms of sizes of plant materials is really well documented on our proposals. So we're looking forward to continuing this process and helping the units look better. And we're sorry that we have to ask you to spend a bit more, but I think when you consider that some people estimate that as much as 20 or 30% of the value of your home is in the landscape and the property itself, we hope that you'll feel like it's a dollar well spent. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes?
Did you consider the area between the west side, between the apartments and the last building that was built?
Inside or outside the fence?
Inside the fence.
We have not done that one yet, but perhaps that'll be the next one that I spend some time with. So,
okay.
Yes.
Is there some erosion and stuff like that?
Yes, we'll be glad to. Yeah, we're just kind of knocking these out a little bit at a time. But we will eventually have cohesive plans for all of these units, which will give you a more seamless look. Some plant material will be kind of carried from unit to unit, so you have some repetition, but all of the units vary somewhat in terms of their exposure and their individual site requirements. So there will always be something that makes each of the units individual and individualistic, I should say. So you'll have some identity with each of the units.
Can you give us a little bit of range on the cost?
Sure. These estimates range anywhere from, I believe, $9,000 to about $500. Each of them, right. So in terms of the first, when I mentioned, redoing the foundations of some of these blocks of units, the one along La Vista Road is about $9,000. That also includes, you have lawn in those areas that is failing because of the shade of the trees. So we're doing some stepping stone pathways that will link all of that, so you'll be able to walk around the property. So there's a little bit more in terms of specific costs of material for that area, as well as it being a slightly larger block. The benefit to doing that second block when you come in through the gate on the Vista Circle, it's less than half of that, so it's about $3,500, I believe, to do those 7 units. It's a much smaller space. There isn't a lot of hardscaping. The drainage repair, as I mentioned, at $2,253, I think that was less than $500. The grading issue at $1,258, I believe it is even less than that. So, some of these can be broken down. We could do 2 units at a time, 3 units at a time. We have the ability to work within any kind of budget and within any kind of specific interest that you have. So these estimates, we've tried to break it down into some logical chunks, but they could also be broken down further.
And if the community decided they wanted to tackle this all at once in one summer,
Yes.
how much
So,
would that be?
99.9% of the properties, similarly scaled properties that we maintain, compared to this one, most of them pick one or two or three small projects to do per year, so they feel like they're kind of working at this over a length of time. But certainly, if projects are combined, there's often some degree of savings in terms of overlapping labor costs, what have you. So sure, yeah, it could be done all at once or just portioned out.
But are we talking $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 or?
He hasn't given us estimates for those.
Yeah.
He has not?
It's, right now, I think if you combine all of the estimates that we've done so far with the 10 or 12, I think we're probably at maybe 30, 50, 35 to 50.
These, the ones in the packet that we have
Yes.
right now, in that packet is about $37,000.
Okay.
So,
If you did it all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just, for the sake of the people that are not in the room,
Yeah.
just to give
Yeah,
them kind of a,
those we haven't, again, we have not.
But there's
done
still other
plans.
areas we haven't done.
Yeah.
We've only done probably 20% maybe of the.
yeah,
projects.
it just kind of gives people scale.
Right.
So,
Right.
Well, and the other thing was, we had asked Grasshopper to do an area so that people could see what it's going to look like and give you a feel, and then we could gather comments, and also explain what the process was for that row of homes. I don't necessarily think all the homes are gonna look alike,
Right, that's right.
even throughout the property. I don't think that's the intent, but it's, like you said, to add visual interest and color throughout the year, and make it workable.
Right, and we're not aiming for the hanging gardens of Babylon. We're really, looking to enhance the property, to give you something that's appropriate to the property,
Different.
and we're using plant material that is reliable, lower maintenance in terms of, we in particular like a more natural shape in terms of the plantings. So, choosing plant material that's more appropriate to the heights of the windows, the scale of the architecture, so just something that really flatters the property.
Which area would you say needs immediate attention? Because let's say we waited on that and it got worse and then we were ending up spending more money. That's of course one thing that I think that we would all like to prevent or to avoid is spending more money. So where would you say we need to actually concentrate on?
I would say that the main emergency that you have right now is that central courtyard. And that's really due to the poor drainage solutions that were originally installed there. So fixing the drainage in that area and putting in some sod that would provide a more usable area that would also help to retain some of the soil and not open you up to some of the erosion issues that are currently occurring. That area plus the drainage issue at that retaining wall, which is also in that courtyard, those are probably the two issues that need to be addressed relatively soon. That courtyard could be installed at any time, but when the grass is actively growing, so sometime, here, once spring eventually gets here, I would think that would be the best time to do that. We could put the sod down now, but it doesn't really root in and it doesn't knit itself together as fast as it will then. And because you have people that are walking their dogs or perhaps children playing there, it would be better to do that lawn work and associated drainage with it when the grass is actively growing in the spring. So that can be done as soon as April. In terms of doing kind of the show landscapes for those blocks of buildings, could be done at any time. The ideal planting time here is between September and March, but we continue to landscape year round. Anything that we install and we are maintaining is guaranteed for a year, so it does take a lot of the rain out of it. Yes?
You mentioned relocate, trying to salvage and use as much as we have, just may not be appropriate to where it is currently.
Right.
When you remove those plants and put other plants in, how does that affect the termite letter or termite bond we have on our individual homes?
We aren't doing anything that I think that Walter Reeves, the gardening expert in Orlando, will agree. A lot of bug companies tend to put more fear of God in you than is reasonable. The plant material that we're installing for you, plant material in itself is not particularly attractive to termites. Even the mulch, where if it's applied properly, is not going to produce or attract any more insects.
I was thinking more about the soil treatment that they do before plantings are done. You would
No, we would.
Would that interfere with that?
No, it would, all we're doing is adding, it's all organic material. We are amending the soil for each individual plant. We're not taking out all of the soil in one area and replacing that. So, no, we would have absolutely no. We stay away from any termite stations that you might have. If they have to be relocated, we make sure that they're appropriately relocated. But no, it doesn't impact anything.
Thank you.
Well, I hope if you have individual questions or you have concerns about the maintenance, that you will contact the board members with that. And we're in really good contact, I believe. And anything that you see that needs to be addressed, we want to address it as fast as possible. So, so things are fixed relatively quickly. And if you have, again, any questions regarding these estimates or the plans, just communicate them to the board, and I'd be glad to send out emails to any homeowners. Yes?
One more question. Sure. What kind of warranty or guarantee do y'all have?
Any of the plant material that we are providing and installing and maintaining is guaranteed for a year. We can't obviously guarantee the survivability of transplants, but we take every caution that we can. That plant material is, when it's planted, it is amended as thoroughly, the soil is amended as thoroughly as anything new that we're planting for you. So, and most of your plant material isn't, of an age yet that it would not be transplantable. So, yeah, any of the new blankets would be guaranteed for a year.
And what about the drainage stuff?
The drainage too, any problems that we have, in terms of that courtyard, we're going to be installing a swale, so it's kind of a surface drain to provide sharper drainage to the existing drainage box, which we believe will certainly be able to handle that. There's enough fall there. But any problems that you have, we're on site again every week. We're assessing the property every time you come. You have the same crews every single time, so they're well aware of any problems that are occurring.
Right.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.